Okay guys, this is a slightly different video. This is a video that I'm making and I'm going to start taking you through some of the great comics that I have. Yeah, so today I'm actually featuring The Watchmen, right? So Watchmen was a 12 episode or 12 issue comic. Um, and actually it's quite a classic. I think it was released in the early 90s or mid 90s, right? So so the Watchmen was actually quite interesting because the storyline was basically focused around a whole bunch of costume heroes, right? And these costume heroes are, starting from this guy here. His name is Ozymandias, Silk Spectre, the Comedian, Night Owl, and Rorschach, right? And there's another one which is in the next slide. So these five superheroes, and this was all set in the 70s, right? So these five superheroes basically were vigilantes. They had no superpowers, so they were a little bit like Batman, so right. So they either use their wits or their strength, right? But Ozymandias is generally quite super smart, right? So the storyline was based on an alternate universe in the United States in the 70s. And yeah, so during the 70s in the US, there were all sorts of costume superheroes, but basically these guys were nothing but vigilantes. And in the storyline, there was this guy called Dr. Manhattan, right? So Dr. Manhattan was the only true superhero, as in he was the only guy who had only had the real powers, right? And he was very powerful. He's almost like godlike, right? So he can basically reconstruct his atoms. He can, through a snap of his finger, duplicate himself. He can teleport. Basically he's omniscient and omnipotent, right? So storyline was set in that time where there was all these costume heroes which were basically vigilantes, and there was plus this Dr. Manhattan. And it was during the time in the 70s where Richard Nixon was still president of the United States, right? And unknown to all those heroes, one of them, the comedian, actually was working for President Nixon, right? So he was doing all his dirty job and things like that. So apparently in that alternate storyline, the comedian even cleaned up the Nixon Watergate scandal, right? And because of that, Nixon survived and he became president for another 5 terms, right? So again, it's an alternate universe, right? And during those times, I think then President Nixon outlawed all the superheroes except two, right? He outlawed all costume superheroes except the comedian who was working for him, right, doing his dirty job, and Dr. Manhattan, because you can't outlaw Dr. Manhattan, right? Dr. Manhattan was like omnipotent, right? And it was set at the time where there was a Cold War going on with the Soviet Union, right? So the America and the whole world was almost at the brink of war, right? Anything would trigger a war between the US and the Soviet Union. Very much like history, right? So the only difference is alternate universe. There were costume heroes, but basically vigilantes, outlawed by Nixon, and one real superpowered human being, right, which is Dr. Manhattan. And what happened was the entire series was started when the comedian was killed, right? So someone murdered the comedian, threw him off, yeah, and then he fell down and he died. And Rorschach, which was one of the Watchmen, right? So in issue number 1, he started the investigation. So he investigated the comedian's murder, right? And he started to piece things together. So the entire 12 episodes was basically, half of it was about Rorschach investigating, finding clues, trying to find out who murdered the comedian. And there was a lot of flashbacks to the past and things like that, right? So yeah, so this is a little bit about Dr. Manhattan, right? So Ozymandias was actually quite a smart guy, right? He um, because of the Cold War between the U.S. and Soviet Union. So this Ozymandias, like as mentioned to you, he's a very smart guy, right? He devised this diabolical plan in terms of how to invoke world peace. And his diabolical plan was basically he cooked up a whole bunch of scientists in a room and they created this squid-like creature, right? And his plan was he planned to drop this squid-like creature on New York and um, create havoc, and with the hope that when he drops this creature, he creates um, a situation where there was an alien invasion, right? Squid creature, and because of that, he was hoping that then the U.S. and Soviet would stop the Cold War and work together, right, to go against this global threat, right, which was the squid-like creature. Yeah, so that was his diabolical plan, right? Very weird, right? And in the process of doing that diabolical plan, um, he killed the comedian, right? Because I think a comedian found out about it, right? And um, to throw people off course, Ozymandias hired someone to shoot him, right? So he won't be a suspect. And he then had someone planted in a TV show where they were interviewing Dr. Manhattan, right? So there was a guy planted in a live studio audience questioning Dr. Manhattan, and then basically creating some doubts that Dr. Manhattan, because of all his superpowers and he's blue, right? Create some doubt in the minds of people that Dr. Manhattan actually was so powerful that he was emitting radiation, right? So through a series of questioning Dr. Manhattan, then and everybody turned against him, and he decided, right, because the storyline was because of all the radiation that he had, he was causing cancer to people, and the guy who was questioning during that TV show had proof that Dr. Manhattan's previous lovers all got cancer, right? So Dr. Manhattan decided, right? So he's so powerful, but he is basically a guy who doesn't want to fight, right? So because people were creating so much doubt about his powers creating cancer, he decided to basically teleport himself to Mars. So that's basically what he did, right? So powerful, teleported himself to Mars, and that's how Ozymandias got rid of Dr. Manhattan, right? So again, going back to Ozymandias, his grand plan was drop a creature because he wanted to stop the Cold War. He wanted to stop the war between the U.S. and Soviet Union, and he had to get rid of some of the people who would suspect him. So that's why he killed the comedian. He had himself shot so he won't be suspected, and he got Dr. Manhattan teleported to Mars, right? So, and then through some series of suspicions, he also got Rorschach thrown into jail, right? So then what he did was he dropped the squid creature that was actually his creation on New York, and that squid creature basically killed 3 million people, and because of this devastating death toll, the war between the US and the Soviet Union was called off. Right, they were about to go to war, so squid-like creature dropped, right, and the US and Soviet Union decided to work with each other. So, right, so that was the premise of the Watchmen, right, and Ozymandias basically, said, yeah, he did it, right. He had a brilliant idea to stop the world from going to war. But of course, Rorschach then escaped, right, from prison. He, as I mentioned, is a 12-part series, and half the story was about Rorschach trying to piece together the puzzle in terms of why the comedian was killed. So he figured it out, right? He figured out that actually it was Ozymandias, right? He created this fantastic plan to drop this creature, and he obviously disagreed, right? But there lies the dilemma, right? That's why it makes Watchmen such a great series, right? So so Rorschach knew that Ozymandias did something bad, um, and basically he wanted to reveal to the entire world that, look, this creature is fake, right? But Dr. Manhattan then came back from Mars and also was in the dilemma, because if you let the truth be revealed, then the US and the Soviet Union will go back to war, right? So, and then Rorschach threatened to go and reveal everything. So what Dr. Manhattan did was he obliterated Rorschach, right? So the truth was kept, right? But you know, um, before Rorschach was killed, Rorschach actually wrote down all his findings, and he actually mailed all his findings to a reporter, right? And so in the final episode, you can see that the letter was actually delivered to a reporter, right? So that was the ending, right? So the ending was basically Ozymandias won, created a fantastic scheme to stop the world from the brink of war, but there lies the paradox. He actually killed 3 million people to stop the world going on the brink of war, right? So is that right or is that wrong? And of course, Rorschach wanted to reveal this diabolical plan, and Dr. Manhattan killed Rorschach to stop the truth from being revealed. So it's a very complex storytelling and a complex storyline, right? So yeah, so that's how the Watchmen ended. The Watchmen ended with basically the letter being delivered to a reporter. So you have to, make up your mind in terms of what actually happened next, right? So I want to do this short video just to explain to you the storyline and the premise of the Watchmen, because in a future video then I will explain to you the HBO series called The Watchmen, because this Watchmen was actually done set in the 70s, and I think a few months ago HBO actually had a series called The Watchmen, and that series was set 30 years after all the things that happened in the comic series, right? So there was never a part 2 of The Watchmen from the comic, but HBO actually did a series. So that's actually quite interesting, and a lot of the things that I explained from the comic actually carries on to the series. So I'll make another video on that. Alright, okay, thanks for watching.